I was sitting in my corner office on the 47th floor, overlooking downtown Manhattan, when the text came through. It was a Tuesday. 3:47 p.m. I remember that because I stared at the time for a full minute, wondering if I was hallucinating. My dad, Richard Graves, hadn't contacted me in over 1,000 days, and now he suddenly wanted to play family reunion? The last time he summoned me like this, I was 30 years old, standing alone in a bridal suite in heels that cost more than my monthly rent at the time, waiting for him to walk me down the aisle. Spoiler alert, he didn't show. I married Mason anyway. In a candlelit ceremony with just 50 people, including my younger sister, who cried the entire time out of fury at our father, and my best friend Janelle, who had to fill in as both maid of honor and crisis therapist. Now I was 34, co-founder and CEO of one of the fastest-growing luxury hotel chains in the country, and apparently worth more than the son he always wished he'd had. The company Mason and I built, Graves and Hartwell, had just been featured in Forbes, and the valuation came back at $580 million after our expansion into Singapore. Suddenly my last name was useful to him again. I called my assistant, Gabby, into the office. Clear my evening. She blinked. The Paris investor dinner? Push it to Friday. Tessa, they flew in for. I said clear it. I didn't explain. I just picked up my bag, left my skyline view behind, and headed toward the brownstone I swore I'd never step foot in again. When I arrived at my childhood home, the one with the wrought iron gate and aggressively silent staff, I was greeted by my mother, looking like she'd stepped out of a Saks catalog and aged 10 years. I wasn't sure you'd come, she whispered, pulling me into a hug that smelled like gardenias and guilt. Neither was I said flatly. Inside, my sister Grace was already seated at the table, swirling a glass of red wine like it was her coping mechanism. What's this about? I asked. Dad trying to save the family legacy now that I've made one without him? Grace smirked. Oh, it's worse than that. Just then, my father entered the dining room. He looked older. Grayer. But still walked like a man who owned the world. Glad you could make it, he said. No apology. No smile. Just arrogance and a half-pour of Cabernet. I sat down, crossed my arms, and met his gaze squarely. Let's skip the family small talk, I said. Why am I here? He leaned back, steepled his fingers, and said 5 words that made my blood go cold. I want to buy your company. I actually laughed. Out loud. Right there at the dinner table. It wasn't graceful or composed, it was the kind of laugh that gets caught in your throat because you're trying not to scream. You want to what now? I said, blinking. Dad didn't flinch. Graves and Hartwell. The valuation is solid. You've built something impressive. But I can give it stability, scalability. You mean control, I cut in. You want to buy back the daughter you threw away by swallowing the business she built. My mother looked down at her plate like her soup might contain an escape hatch. Grace made a low whistling sound. This isn't personal, he said, completely ignoring the fact that it absolutely was. The family brand is under pressure. Our legacy is fading. Your company could restore it. I leaned in, voice cool and sharp. You're right about one thing. It's not personal. Not anymore. If it was, I'd tell you to choke on that Bordeaux and crawl back into whatever country club cave you've been hiding in. But since it's business, here's my counter, hell no. His face darkened, but his tone stayed perfectly measured. Don't be rash. Rash? I said. You missed my wedding. You cut me off from marrying a man who didn't graduate from an Ivy League school. And now that I've built something successful, without you, mind you, you want in? You used the Graves name, he snapped. Don't pretend you built that empire from nothing. Oh, I used the name? I leaned back and smiled sweetly. You're right. I did. And then I redefined it. When people hear Graves now, they don't think of hedge funds and boardroom scandals. They think of luxury, innovation, 5-star design, and a woman who turned your cold-blooded reputation into warm hospitality. My mother flinched. Grace was now openly recording on her phone. For legal reasons, she whispered. Also possibly for Instagram. You're making a mistake, my father said, standing now. I'm offering you protection. Resources. No, I said, standing to meet him eye to eye. You're offering me chains. Dipped in gold, sure, but still chains. His lips parted like he was about to say something else, but I was already done. You disowned me when I needed you most. Don't think for a second I'll save you now that you're sinking. I walked out. And that should have been the end. But 2 days later, 3 of our investors dropped out of the Singapore expansion. Each one cited concerns about internal family conflicts. Dad hadn't just tried to buy me. He was trying to destroy me. The attack came faster than I expected. By Friday morning, Gabby stood in my office doorway looking like she'd seen a ghost. "You're going to want to see this," she said, sliding a printed article onto my desk. Graves' daughter's hospitality empire faces turbulence amid family rift. It was from a business gossip rag, but the quotes were real. Anonymous sources. Vague accusations. Words like mismanagement, risky leadership, and internal fractures. "This is war," I muttered, grabbing my phone. I called Mason first. 3 investors down, and now I'm the cover girl for dysfunction. He was quiet for a beat. "He's trying to bury us." "I know," I said. "But he's forgetting one thing: we already built this business out of nothing. He has no idea how scrappy I can be." Gabby poked her head in again. "There's one more thing," she said. "Thomas is here." I blinked. "Thomas Graves? My cousin Thomas?" She nodded. "And he brought a non-disclosure agreement." When he walked in, he looked like a younger version of my father, same jawline, same arrogant walk, but his eyes were different. Apologetic. Nervous. "I'm not supposed to be here," he said, sitting across from me. "But I need to tell you something." "Let me guess," I said. "My father's trying to sabotage me using every connection he has. Paid-off sources. Whisper campaigns." Thomas winced. "And he's trying to poach your CFO." I froze. "He what?" "He's offering her double her salary and equity in a shell company he plans to spin off after your collapse." I stood so fast my chair nearly toppled. "After my what now?" "He's calling it a hostile rescue," Thomas said. "He genuinely thinks he's saving the family name from you." That was it. I was done playing defense. That night, over Chinese takeout and a bottle of something wildly expensive, Mason and I laid it all out on the kitchen island, every asset, every partner, every ace we hadn't yet played. "I want to hit him where it hurts," I said. "And where's that?" Mason asked, mouth full of shrimp dumpling. "Legacy," I said. "Control. Empire." I slid a folder across to him. "He's been trying to acquire the Westbourne portfolio for months. If we outbid him, it'll tank his recovery plan." Mason raised an eyebrow. "It's aggressive." "It's war," I said. "And I don't lose wars." He grinned. "Damn. Remind me never to cross you." "Too late," I said. "You left the dumplings open and now they're cold." We got to work. And for the first time since my father re-entered my life, I felt something dangerous stirring. Not anger. Not revenge. Power. We made our move at dawn. Not metaphorically, literally. At 6:02 a.m. the following Tuesday, I was on a Zoom call with our legal team, 2 private equity reps in Zurich, and an emotionally dead-eyed woman named Allegra from Singapore who handled numbers like she handled knives. Efficiently and with no survivors. By 8 a.m. we had assembled a joint bid for the Westbourne portfolio that was $22 million higher than my father's last offer, with cleaner terms and international backing. By 10 a.m., his attorney had already called mine, asking what the hell is she doing? By lunch, I was sipping espresso in a midtown bistro while Mason laid out the next phase, press strategy. "If we leak the deal before he can spin it, he'll look like he's flailing," Mason said. "Because he is flailing," I replied. "But yes. Let's make it official." Then came the press release. Graves and Hartwell announces bid for Westbourne luxury portfolio in partnership with Global Equity Consortium. It hit the wires at 3:01 p.m. At 3:03, my phone rang. Caller ID, Dad. I let it ring. Twice. 3 times. Then I answered. "Well played," he said without preamble. "But this isn't over." "No, it isn't," I said calmly. "But we both know who's winning." "You're being vindictive." "I'm being strategic," I said. "If I were being vindictive, I'd also leak the email you sent to my investors calling me unstable and emotionally compromised." Silence. "Thought so," I said. "I built everything you stand on," he snapped. "No," I said softly. "You built the platform. I climbed off it, built my own skyscraper, and now I'm watching yours crack from the top floor of mine." The line went dead. For the next week, things escalated quickly. Anonymous tips were sent to journalists questioning my credentials. My high school SAT scores mysteriously appeared on Twitter. Really, Dad? A 1240 in 2006? Mason's inbox filled with offers from consulting firms curious about his long-term future apart from the company. My sister Grace received a threatening letter at her apartment with no return address. That's what I called a friend I hadn't spoken to in years. Noelle Dempsey. Yale Law. Corporate shark. Happily ruthless. How mean do you want me to be? She asked. I didn't hesitate. I want him bleeding without a bruise. She smiled. Oh, honey. You called the right girl. And just like that, the game changed. Because now, I wasn't just fighting to protect what I'd built. I was fighting to end this. On my terms. Once and for all. Noelle Dempsey went to work like she was auditioning for a villain origin story. Within 48 hours, she'd filed a cease and desist, subpoenaed phone records, and traced 3 investor sabotage emails directly to a private contractor formerly employed by Graves Financial. I haven't even opened the good wine yet, she said cheerfully during a strategy call. This is just me on espresso and spite. Meanwhile, our PR team launched what we lovingly called Operation Burnish, full-page profiles in Architectural Digest and Fast Company, flattering coverage in Condé Nast Traveler, and a surprise spread in Forbes Women with the headline. The CEO who rebuilt her family's name and then took it back. My mother texted me a screenshot of that cover at 7 a.m. You look beautiful. I'm proud. Love, Mom. That was new. But the real shocker came later that afternoon, when Grace showed up at my office with a box of muffins and a manila envelope. He's coming undone, she said, dropping into a chair. I think he's drinking again. I blinked. What? He fired Thomas. This morning. No warning. Just rage and a stapler through a wall. My stomach dropped. Jesus. I tried talking to him. He said I'm a traitor. He called you a calculated disgrace. Then he offered me your CFO's job. I stared at her. Wait, he tried to hire you? She nodded. I told him to shove it. Nicely. Kind of. Why the muffins? Because I knew you'd forget to eat. And because I'm sorry. I should have said this years ago, but you were right. About everything. I felt something sharp twist in my chest. Grace, I said softly, you walked me down the aisle when he didn't show. That's what mattered. Yeah, she said, tearing a piece of muffin in half, but I never stood up to him after that. I let him keep treating you like a ghost because it was easier to avoid the fight. Now I was the one blinking fast. She handed me the envelope. This is his new strategy packet for the Graves board. Someone leaked it. Inside were detailed plans to relaunch a hospitality division, complete with branding mock-ups clearly ripped from my company's design language. Same aesthetic. Same color palette. Even the same damn monogram pattern on the robes. Oh, he's really losing it, I muttered. I think he's trying to replace you with a copy of you, Grace said. Which is pathetic, but also dangerous. That night, Mason and I reviewed every angle. Legally, we were safe. Publicly, we were golden. But emotionally? I was a wreck. Because the man who had once cradled me when I broke my arm at age 6 was now trying to erase me out of existence. And the worst part? A part of me still wanted him to stop. Still wanted him to see me. Not as a threat. Not as a mistake. But as his daughter. 2 weeks later, the Westbourne deal closed. It was official, Graves and Hartwell now owned 28 properties across 3 continents, and the flagship building my father had been eyeing since 2019. The business media lit up like a Christmas tree. Graves ousted from bid by estranged daughter's firm. Daughter destroys father's comeback attempt and doubles her empire. Every headline was a knife to his ego. And while I didn't exactly cheer, I also didn't mind twisting the blade a little. I expected silence. What I got was a voicemail. Tessa, my father's voice said, brittle and forced, we should talk. Face to face. I replayed it 4 times before calling Grace. Am I crazy for considering it? I asked. No, she said. But bring a lawyer. Or a taser. I didn't bring either. Instead, I met him at his club on the Upper East Side, in a room full of overpolished mahogany and the kind of taxidermy that screams daddy issues. He was already seated, hands folded over a scotch. "You look well," he said, like it was a minor miracle I hadn't collapsed under the weight of my own ambition. "You look tired," I replied. He didn't argue. "I made mistakes," he began. "Plenty of them. But you've made this personal." I smiled, slow and sweet. "You skipped my wedding. That was pretty personal." His jaw twitched. "I thought I was protecting you from a mistake." "Mason?" I asked. "Or the mistake of thinking I could succeed without your blessing?" "I was trying to preserve the family name," he said, tone rising. "Everything I built was never about me," I snapped. "It was about your image. Your control. Your narrative. I just happened to be the daughter who refused to play the role." He took a long sip of scotch. "This isn't about revenge," I continued. "It's about independence. Respect. You taught me how to fight, Dad. You just didn't expect me to aim that fight at you." "I underestimated you," he said finally. "But don't pretend you haven't wanted to beat me." I tilted my head. "Of course I did. Every daughter wants her father's approval. And when she doesn't get it, she has two choices: break, or build something so powerful, he has no choice but to see her." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, to my surprise, he nodded. "You built something extraordinary," he said softly. "And I tried to tear it down. That's on me." I didn't speak. He wasn't finished. "I'm stepping down," he said. "Effective immediately." The board pushed. I didn't resist. I blinked. "You're leaving Graves Financial?" "I've already left," he said. "There's nothing left for me to fix." And just like that, the king fell. But the strangest part? I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not Mason, not Grace, not even Gabby, who noticed everything, including when I changed my nail color or switched to decaf. I needed time to sit with it. To decide what it meant that my father had stepped down, had actually said the words, "I was wrong." Not sorry. Not "please forgive me." But still, more than I ever thought I'd get. 3 days later, I received a package at my office. No return label. Just my name, handwritten in clean, familiar script. Inside was a velvet box. I knew it before I opened it. My grandmother's watch. The one she'd worn every day of her life, the one she promised would be mine one day. But after the wedding, Dad had locked it away for safekeeping. Translation, as punishment. Now, here it was. Tucked inside was a note. Just 6 words. "She would have been proud. So am I." I stared at it for a long time. Then I put the watch on my wrist. It fit perfectly. Later that week, Mason and I attended the ribbon cutting for our newest property, the Westbourne Manhattan. Press everywhere. Mayor in attendance. And yes, a damn red carpet. It was surreal. David and I posed for photos, shook hands with investors, toasted champagne under a chandelier the size of my first apartment. And then, just as I was about to sneak off to the ladies' room to breathe, Mason touched my arm. "You have a visitor," he said carefully. "Lobby." My stomach dropped. I didn't need to ask who. I found him standing near the central fountain, hands clasped behind his back, looking up at the soaring glass atrium. The same man who once told me I'd embarrass the family if I chased hospitality. Now standing in the empire I'd built from it. "I wasn't going to come," he said, eyes still on the ceiling. "Didn't think I'd be welcome." "You're not welcome," I replied. "Let's call it, tolerated." A faint smirk crossed his lips. "This place," he said, finally turning to look at me, "it's beautiful." "It's ours," I said. "Mine and Mason's." He nodded slowly. "I can see that now." We stood there in silence, surrounded by the sound of water and faint piano music from the event upstairs. "I can't fix the past," he said. "I'm not asking you to," I replied. "I missed a lot," he said. I nodded. "Yes. You did. But I'm here now," he said softly. "If that means anything." I thought about it. It did. Not everything. But something. "You can stay for the speech," I said. "There's cake." "Carrot?" "Red velvet." He grimaced. "You always were dramatic. And you always were a snob." He smiled. It was small. But real. The ballroom shimmered with light, golden and theatrical, just the way Mason liked it. Massive floral installations framed the stage, and the faint hum of conversation buzzed like champagne fizz. I stood just behind the curtain with a glass of sparkling water in one hand and a speech I hadn't looked at once in the other. Not because I wasn't prepared, but because I knew exactly what I needed to say. Mason caught my eye from across the room and gave me a small nod. Our signal. I stepped out. The applause swelled and echoed under the crystal chandeliers. Some clapped because they'd watched our rise from the beginning. Some clapped because they wanted to be part of the next chapter. And a few, I knew, clapped because they'd once bet against me and now had no choice but to clap anyway. I smiled as the noise died down. Not a show smile. A real one. Thank you, I said, taking the mic. It's been a wild ride. A few polite laughs. I want to tell you a story, I continued, my voice steady. 5 years ago, I stood in an unfinished lobby in Brooklyn, wearing a hard hat 3 sizes too big, holding a hammer I barely knew how to use. My husband Mason was beside me, looking at blueprints. I was holding back tears because our first hotel was 2 weeks from opening and the plumbing had just failed. Again. Another laugh, this one more knowing. That hotel was supposed to be a disaster. Industry blogs called it a risky pet project. One headline literally said, too young, too broke, too ambitious. They weren't wrong. We had no cushion. No safety net. And definitely no backup plan. But we had one thing, each other. I paused, meeting Mason's eyes. We built that first hotel on grit, caffeine, and an absurd amount of duct tape. And now, I gestured around the room. Now we're standing in the flagship Manhattan property of a global brand. Westbourne is ours. Every detail. Every design. Every decision made with intention. Applause again, bigger this time. And yes, I continued, there were people who doubted us. Who said we couldn't do it? Who tried to stop us? Sometimes, they were even people who once claimed to love us. The room went quiet. I'm not here to pretend that didn't matter. It did. It hurt. But the thing about pain? It makes you powerful. It forces you to ask, what do I actually believe in? What do I stand for when no one's cheering? I looked at the front row, where Grace sat next to my mother, who looked like she was trying not to cry and failing spectacularly. I believe in second chances, I said, glancing toward the back, where my father stood alone, quietly watching. But not the kind where you get to erase the past. The kind where you own it. Grow from it. Make something better because of it. I could see the tears in his eyes. I didn't look away. We're not here tonight just to celebrate a new property, I finished. We're here because we refused to let failure define us. Because we turned rejection into motivation. Because we kept going. That's what this company is built on. Not revenge. Not legacy. Resilience. A beat of silence. Then the applause exploded. Mason stepped up beside me and took the mic. Let's raise a glass, he said. To the visionaries. To the fighters. To the people who build something from nothing. And to the woman who taught me how to lead with love, even when the world told her to lead with fear. He raised his glass. To Tessa. I didn't cry. But I came close. After the toast, I slipped out to the lobby for air. The fountain's quiet trickle was a welcome break from the roaring room behind me. That's where my father found me. I heard the whole thing, he said. I figured. Didn't expect to be mentioned. You weren't, I said. Not directly. He gave a low chuckle. You're sharper than I ever was, you know that? I shrugged. I had to be. We stood in silence again, not awkward this time, just full. I meant what I said, he added, looking at the floor. She would have been proud. My grandmother? He nodded. You remind me of her. Unshakable. She once threatened to throw a senator out of her dinner party for insulting a waitress. She didn't care about titles. Only backbone. I smiled faintly. She gave me that watch when I was 12. Told me I'd wear it the day I became someone worth remembering. He blinked, caught off guard. And do you think you are? I looked at him. I don't think it matters what you think anymore. But yeah. I do. He nodded, slowly. Fair. He turned to leave, then paused. Tessa, I know I don't get to ask this, but, would you ever consider letting me know your daughter again? Not as a business asset. Just, as a father. I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was, I didn't know. Forgiveness wasn't a contract. It wasn't one grand gesture and everything gets wiped clean. It was slow. Messy. Earned. I'm not promising anything, I said finally. But I'm not slamming the door shut either. He looked like he might cry again. But instead, he smiled. Just a little. I'll take it. Later that night, I sat on the balcony of our penthouse suite, still in my gala dress, legs curled under me, glass of wine untouched beside me. Mason came out and wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. So, he said, settling next to me. You won. You built the empire. You gave the speech. Your dad didn't combust. How do you feel? I thought about it. About all of it. The truth? I said. I don't feel like I won. I feel like I arrived. Like I finally stopped waiting for someone to hand me something I already earned. He kissed the top of my head. That's because you did. The city sparkled beneath us. Bright. Unapologetic. I looked down at the watch on my wrist, at the reflection of a woman who had been underestimated, dismissed, tested, and pushed to the edge, and still chose to build something instead of burn everything down. That's who I was now. Not a daughter seeking approval. Not a woman proving a point. But a builder. A survivor. A leader. On her own terms. And in the end, that was worth more than any empire. It was mine. Fully, finally, completely mine.